Welcome to Carol and Gary's See America Tour. Hello everyone from Lafayette, Louisiana. Today is Monday, July 2nd. Carol and I arrived here yesterday after a 4-hour drive south from Monroe. And as information, our slider worked fine when packing up to leave Monroe, so hopefully this is the end of that problem. Today we drove 20 miles south of Lafayette to Avery Island to visit the Tabasco Pepper Sauce Company, which has been making this concoction since 1868. Tabasco pepper sauce was invented by Edmund McElhinney by combining 3 ingredients: aged red peppers, natural vinegar, and a dash of Avery Island mined salt. The process and the recipe have remained unchanged since 1868. In fact, a 5th generation McElhinney runs the company today. The pepper is picked at the perfect shade of red, then immediately crushed, mixed with salt, and aged in white oak barrels for 3 years. The aged mash is then blended with vinegar for 2 to 3 weeks, strained to remove the pepper skins and seeds, then bottled, capped, and labeled with the familiar diamond label before being shipped all over the world. Here is the storage area where the peppers sit for 3 years. Each barrel has a white label on it identifying when it was filled. Here a worker is removing a few of the bottles from the line. Looking at the bottles she is removing, it appears that they are not full enough. This machine is placing caps on the bottles. As bottles are labeled, they are counted. They have bottled over 165,000 bottles today. Here some of the cap bottles with labels are headed for packaging. And finally, this machine is slipping filled, capped, and labeled bottles into small boxes for shipment. And then we pass through the gift shop where everything Tabasco is sold. After touring the Tabasco plant, Carol and I drove around on Avery Island. The area we drove through is known as the Jungle Gardens. In addition to creating Tabasco pepper sauce, Edmund McElhinney helped save the snowy egret from extinction. In 1895, egrets were being hunted for their plumage, so Mr. McElhinney built an aviary on Avery Island, captured and raised 8 wild egrets. After they had raised their hatches and were ready to migrate, he released the birds. The egrets returned the next spring, and every spring since then. Delighted that the egrets returned, Mr. McElhinney built a rookery, which is a place where a colony of birds can live and breed. In another area that we visited, we saw an egret patiently waiting for a fish. In addition to the birds, many large oak trees with Spanish moss are prominent on the property, as well as azaleas and numerous bamboo growths. Today, Edmund McElhinney's house sits empty on Avery Island. July 3rd, Carol and I visited the Cajun Culture Center in Lafayette. Ancestors of today's Cajuns were once French colonists who settled in Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and Prince Edward Island in the 1600s.
There were once Cajuns in Nova Scotia. Really?
Hold on, let me explain. When the colonists arrived, the area was considered to be part of Canada, so they named the region Acadia and were known as Acadians. In 1713, the British took over Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and Prince Albert Island and expected all of the settlers, including the Acadians, who, if you remember, came from France, to be loyal subjects and defend the kingdom. A few of the Acadians began voluntarily leaving Acadia, but between 1755 and 1763, 11,500 Acadians were forcibly deported, first to other British colonies in North America and then to England and France. This deportation is known as the Great Expulsion. In 1765, Acadians began immigrating to Louisiana, which at the time was under Spanish rule. In 1785, 1,600 Acadians immigrated to Louisiana. In 1803, the United States purchased 827,000 square miles of land west of the Mississippi River from France. You history buffs will recognize this as the Louisiana Purchase. In 1812, Louisiana became a state. In 1868, it was documented for the first time that the word Cajun was used as a shortened local form of Acadian in Louisiana. So there you have it. That's why the people known as Cajuns live in Louisiana. Today is July 4th. Carol and I decided to take it easy today and try to find some fireworks in the evening. But as it turned out, all fireworks were postponed due to the rain. Today is Thursday, July 5th. Carol and I drove 30 miles southeast of Lafayette this morning to Lake Martin, where we had booked a 2-hour swamp tour. Sorry, but because we were in a small motorboat, the video might be a little shaky at times. This is going to be a lot of video, so rather than talking through this, I will just add things to the screen when appropriate. A quick note on the anhinga. Our guide said that these birds dive into the water to spear fish with their long beak, so their wings get wet. When they have their wings extended, they are drying. These birds can also adjust their buoyancy so that only their head and neck are above the water. south end of Lake Martin Swamp is off limits to all boat traffic, including canoes and kayaks, to provide a quiet nesting place for birds. Hello everybody, today is Friday, July 6th. Carol and I visited Jefferson Island today. Jefferson Island is located 20 miles south of Lafayette and near Avery Island, where we toured the Tabasco company on Tuesday. Like Avery Island, Jefferson Island is not a true island. These areas are called islands because they sit 50 to 100 feet above sea level on mammoth underground columns of salt, which hold them above the surrounding countryside. These columns of salt are 2 to 3 miles wide and 5 miles or more deep. Joseph Jefferson bought 3,600 acres of land to build a hunting lodge and winter home for his family in 1870. Here is a picture of the home that he had built. At the time of the purchase, this area was called Orange Island, but Jefferson decided to rename it in honor of himself. Jefferson was a successful actor who played the part of Rip Van Winkle on stage over 4,500 times. After Jefferson passed away in 1905, his descendants inherited the home. They sold the home and land in 1917 to John Lyle Bayless Sr. Mr. Bayless discovered the salt sometime while living in the home. He built a mining company to extract the salt. 1.5 million tons of salt were produced per year. After John Bayless Sr. passed away, the house went to John Bayless Jr. He began developing the gardens around the home. He named the gardens Rip Van Winkle Gardens in memory of the original owner, Joseph Jefferson. In the 1950s, John Bayless Jr. sold the salt operation to Diamond Crystal Salt Company and then donated the home and 800 acres surrounding the home to a private operating foundation to ensure the gardens' continued operation far beyond his lifetime. In the late 1970s, Mr. Bayless had a new home built near the original home on the shore of 1,300-acre Lake Penier and began enjoying his retirement. On November 20th, 1980, Mr. Bayless's dreams were washed away when a Texas drilling rig set up on Lake Penier, 250 feet offshore, pierced one of the giant salt caverns under the lake, flooding the entire mine. The quarter-mile-wide vortex into the salt cavern swallowed the entire lake, 65 acres of native woodland, the Rip Van Winkle Welcome Center, a glass conservatory, and the 9-month-old Bayless new home. A drilling rig, 11 barges loaded with trucks and rock salt, boats, and equipment also vanished into the whirlpool. 9 of the 11 barges were coughed up from the deep recesses of the lake after it was refilled by the Gulf of Mexico. What was once a 10-foot deep freshwater lake was suddenly a 1,300-foot deep saltwater lake. Miraculously, with 55 people working in the salt mine that day, no lives were lost. One eyewitness who was fishing in a small boat on the lake that day made it to shore, then tied his boat to a large tree and headed for higher ground. When he turned around to look back, the 150-foot tree that he had tied his boat to and his fishing boat were disappearing into the hole. The damage to the island took 4 years to recover and rebuild. Here is a picture of the fireplace from Mr. Bayless's new home, still standing today, approximately 100 feet offshore. And with that, we are done here in Lafayette. We will be packing up Sunday morning and heading to New Orleans for 2 weeks. If you are watching this video but have not yet subscribed, please do so to be notified of future videos. And please feel free to share with your friends. Thanks for watching.